Act 1, Scene 1, we see three witches. They've just made a prophecy. Macbeth will become king. There is an important line in this which carries out throughout the rest of the play. Foul is fair and fair is foul. Cut to King Duncan on a Scottish field right after a bloody battle took place. MacDonald, the Thane of Cawdor, has just been captured. He had sided with the Norwayans when they invaded and in a rebellion, and the King of Scotland is obviously upset about this. Bloody captain from the battle tells him about the tales of Macbeth and Banquo, who helped to vanquish the Norwegian threat, and the king is obviously very impressed with this. He decides that Macbeth is to get the Thane of Cawdor titleship, and that MacDonald will be executed. The three witches are performing some kind of other ritual when they encounter Macbeth and Banquo. They immediately go and greet them. Hail to Macbeth, Thane of Glamis, which is the place where Macbeth is traditionally Thane of. Then they say, Hail to Macbeth, Thane of Cawdor, which is news to Macbeth. He hasn't found out about this yet. Then they say, Hail to Macbeth, King of Scotland, which is completely absurd to Macbeth. Banquo finds all this silly. The witches are clearly giving him prophecy, and he's interested in what his prophecy is. So he asks. They turn to him, Hail to Banquo, lesser than Macbeth, but greater. They say that Macbeth's children will one day become king. And then the witches vanish. Macbeth and Banquo both make fun of this concept. It's obviously absurd and impossible. But then a messenger appears and tells Macbeth that he's just been declared Thane of Cawdor. Suddenly this absurd concept seems a bit more possible. But both of them agree to leave it up to fate. MacDonald is executed, but he repents before this and thanks the king for giving him an honourable death. Then it's time for the king to declare his next heir. He decides to go with Malcolm, his eldest son. Macbeth is confused by this. He was prophesied to become king, wasn't he? Malcolm is now just another obstacle for Macbeth before he can become king. So a step that he will either step over or trip upon. Macbeth is clearly planning something more unsavoury in his mind. Enter Macbeth's very beautiful wife. Remember, fair is foul, foul is fair. She reads the letter that she receives from Macbeth, which explains all of the happenings and his encounter with the witches. She decides that Macbeth is too full of the milk of human kindness to actually go through with it himself, and she decides that she'll have to do it. Upon finding out that King Duncan will be visiting them in the castle, she immediately unsexes herself. Women were believed to be incapable of committing evil, so by unsexing herself, she's made herself capable to do so. When Macbeth comes, she convinces him that it's time to kill the king. King Duncan arrives at the castle. He talks about how much of a lovely castle it is. It has a nice air to it. The irony is that this is where he will die. Macbeth starts to weigh up whether or not he should actually kill King Duncan. He comes up with many reasons why he shouldn't. He's damning himself to eternal hell. He's rejecting God. King Duncan is a good king. He's a host to King Duncan tonight. All of these things, and yet he has one reason to kill King Duncan. He really, really wants to become king, you see. He decides, although, that he shouldn't. And he goes and tells Lady Macbeth, who immediately tells him that he won't be manly if he doesn't kill King Duncan. Macbeth, of course, is easily convinced. He was just looking for an excuse to go through with it anyway. So, Lady Macbeth was his vessel. Macbeth and Banquo have a quick conversation, and Macbeth goes to kill the king. Before he kills the king, though, he sees a dagger floating before him. He reaches out to grab it, but it disappears. His eyes are making fools of his other senses, he thinks. He goes forth and kills the king. He then comes to Lady Macbeth. He's a bit traumatized of what he's just done. Lady Macbeth comforts him, tells him to wash his hands. A little bit of water will clear them of all these deeds. Macduff finds the body of the king the next morning lying in his bed. Obviously everybody is alarmed, and Macbeth charges and kills the guard in his fury. Obviously he was killing the guards so that they couldn't tell their side of the story and how they were drugged and such. Macduff is curious for this very reason. The king's two sons, Malcolm and Donald Bane, realize that they are two prime suspects for the murder of their father. So they go and flee. Malcolm to England and Donald Bane to Ireland. Malcolm's fleeing to England will come back later on in the story. In the next scene, Ross and what I assume to be his father are having a conversation. They get interrupted by Macduff, who tells them about how Malcolm and Donald Bane have decided to flee to Ireland and England. He then tells them that he won't be attending Macbeth, who has been coronated as the next king, He won't be attending his coronation. He's rather going to go back to his family at home. Macbeth is now the king. He's a bit paranoid about Banquo being around. Banquo is the only other person to know about the prophecy, and is the only other person to have good reason to suspect Macbeth for assassinating King Duncan. Macbeth and Banquo are speaking about how the prophecy has come true. Banquo is excited for his part of the prophecy to come true, but he does say that he is a bit suspicious that Macbeth's came true so quickly. He then leaves to go hunting with his son Fleance. Macbeth is concerned about Banquo's suspicion of him and confides with murderers to go and assassinate Banquo as well, while they're out busy hunting. Lady Macbeth has also become a bit paranoid about the entirety of the whole assassination story. Both she and Macbeth confide in the fact that they're both paranoid. They're a bit jealous about Duncan, who now gets to sleep peacefully, while they have to bear with the burdens of the knowledge of the crimes that they've committed. Lady Macbeth does not know that Macbeth has sent for Banquo to be assassinated. We can tell that there is a bit more of a gap building between the two of them. They're not as much in cahoots with each other as they were before. The murderers kill Banquo. That night, during a feast, Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost. He obviously goes crazy about this and starts shouting at it, telling it to go bury itself. Unlike how Banquo's true body didn't get to be buried, and it's just lying somewhere out in the woods now. He obviously falls down and starts crawling away. Lady Macbeth tries to take charge. This is the last time she does so. Eventually she convinces everyone to go and leave. Stand not upon your order of leaving, just go, she says. This is almost literally she's saying to break the chain of being and just leave. The witches are confiding with Hecate or Hecate, and the Greek goddess of magic and tricks. She's upset with them for telling Macbeth his prophecy and his future through riddles, without involving her. And yet she's also upset that they gave it to such a spoiled brat such as Macbeth. She wants to put an end to him. This shows even the magical world is dissatisfied with Macbeth's rise to kinghood, or kingship, or becoming kingly thingamajig. Lennox and another lord are discussing Macduff's choice to abandon Macbeth and leave for England as well. Macbeth goes to speak to the witches. They tell him to beware Macduff and give him 3 prophecies. Prophecy number 1. None of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Prophecy number 2. He is safe as long as Burnham Woods does not reach Dunsinane. Dunsinane is where the capital, or where his castle is. Burnham Woods is a pretty far away location from there. Prophecy number 3, they show him the lineage of Banquo's children, all as kings. Of course, Macbeth is very upset at the last one. Lennox comes and tells Macbeth about Macduff's choice to leave for England. Macbeth is furious and decides that he's going to go and kill all of Macduff's children. Lady Macduff is very upset at her husband's choice to abandon. Ross tries to comfort her, but eventually realizes it's a lost cause and gives up. She then goes and tells her son about how much of a traitor her father is. Yet her son remains loyal to her father, and also shows himself to be very witty in the way that he responds to her questions. Then the murderers come in, kill the son and kill his mother, Macduff's wife. Cut to Macduff and Malcolm in England. Malcolm is unsure if he can trust Macduff, but he doesn't want Macduff to be offended by that. They both agree that Macbeth is bad and needs to be stopped. England has lent 10,000 men to their cause. Ross comes and tells Macduff about his murdered family. Macduff wants to mourn, but Malcolm insists that he must change that sadness into anger and go and find vengeance, to be like a man. This is where we see a difference between Macduff and Macbeth. For Macduff says he will mourn as a man as well, and does take some time to mourn before he decides to go for his vengeance. Lady Macbeth is not well. A doctor has been come to observe her. Every night she sleepwalks and expresses her guilt, constantly washing her hands, but she can never wash it off. The same person who earlier was saying, "A little bit of water will clear us of our deeds," is now saying that all of the perfumes of Arabia cannot wash her of her guilt. The blood will always remain on her hands. The doctor turns to the nurse and says, "He can't help. This lady needs some form of spiritual mentorship, not a medical doctor." Some men are talking about the impending invasion of Dunsinane. Macbeth is tired of being warned about this invasion. The prophecies made it clear, he's invincible. Birnam Woods won't reach Dunsinane anytime soon, and how can anybody be not of woman born? He decides nonetheless to go and put on his armour prematurely though. His servants insist it's not necessary, but he says he wants to put his armour on. He then turns and asks the doctor how his wife is doing. The doctor says she's ill in the head and there's nothing he can do. That's medication that she must apply to herself. But Macbeth remains confident and insists, No, just give her some kind of medication to lift the pressure off of her head then. He is not in a particularly great mental space either. The invaders line up at Birnam Woods. They decide to use the foliage to hide their numbers as they approach the castle. Effectively, they're moving the forest towards Dunsinane. Oh, what do you know? Macbeth is ready for the siege, but then he hears a woman's cry from off stage. A servant runs to go check. Lady Macbeth has just been found dead in her room. But Macbeth is not just, he's not mourning about this, he is annoyed. Why couldn't she just have gone and died tomorrow? Today's such a chaotic day already. He is not mourning the loss of his wife. He's completely lost it, clearly. Then a servant comes and tells him that Birnam Woods is moving towards the castle. He threatens the servant, calling him a liar. The servant says, You can punish me as much as you like if it's not true. Macbeth goes and looks, and indeed, Birnam Woods is moving. But he hides himself in the confidence that none of woman born can harm him, and everybody's born from a woman, so he must be safe. The invading army has reached Dunsinane. Macbeth is trapped. He's completely relying now on the hope of none of woman born can harm him. A young Cyward comes and tries to attack him, but Macbeth fends him off and tells him that he is a fool for attacking him, for none of woman born can harm him. He then runs away. Macduff, Malcolm, and an older sire come onto stage. They look around, they see Macbeth, and they carry on chasing him. Macbeth and Macduff meet, and a fight commences. Macbeth doesn't want to hurt Macduff because he already has so much blood on his hand. But then Macduff injures Macbeth. Macbeth is confused. None of woman born were supposed to harm him. But then Macduff reveals that he was born through cesarean section, meaning that he technically wasn't of woman born. Suddenly Macbeth is scared. He's in danger. The fight continues and Macbeth is killed. It is revealed that Ross's son died in the battle, although all characters agree that it is a valiant way to die. Macduff comes on stage with Macbeth's head on a pole. They've found success. Macbeth is finally dead. Malcolm will be coronated king and he invites all to come and join him. He thanks them for the assistance and they go to coronate their new proper king. I must say, after reading through that entire play and summarising it in one day, I have developed very mixed feelings towards Shakespeare's language. That's the entirety of Macbeth. I hope it helps. Do not use this as your only study guide, please, because I've missed out on a bunch of symbolism and stuff which I didn't have time to include. I do hope you guys' studying goes well, and best of luck in your test later today, or tomorrow, or whenever you're watching this. Au revoir.